In the last 10 years, a lot has changed in Hollywood. How we watch movies and TV has evolved, but so has the content on our screens. Here are some of the top trends of the 2010s. It all began with the first Avengers movie in 2012. Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America weren't just individual superheroes, they were part of a super team. All the Marvel movies became interconnected. In order to understand the plot of one film, you would have had to watch 20 movies that came before, and so the Marvel Cinematic Universe was born. Now, just about every major movie franchise is part of a cinematic universe. There's the DC Cinematic Universe, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter Cinematic Universe, the Lego Cinematic Universe, the Halloween Cinematic Universe, and the Star Wars Cinematic Universe. With more people deciding to watch TV and movies on streaming services at home, studios are convinced that only sequels, prequels, and spin-offs will draw people to the movie theater. Franchises just keep growing, and they show no sign of stopping. When the decade began, we still watched shows at a scheduled time on TV each week, occasionally catching up on our favorite shows on streaming services. Breaking Bad, for instance, doubled its audience between its penultimate and final season thanks to a Netflix bump. And then Netflix began making original content. Buzzy shows like House of Cards and Orange is the New Black pulled viewers away from traditional network television. And while other streaming services have rushed to catch up with Netflix, with shows like The Handmaid's Tale, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and The Morning Show, Netflix still dominates with hundreds of new TV shows every year. Everyone from studios to tech giants are getting in on the streaming game, and the fate of movie theaters hangs in the balance. More platforms for content has meant a more diverse array of creators getting the chance to bring their stories to screen. Writers and actors of color broke from the staged stories that have long dominated television. In addition to ushering in much-needed change in Hollywood, this makes good business sense. The Star Wars and Fast and Furious franchises have become global sensations in part because of their diverse and international casts. And in 2013, director Ryan Coogler broke onto the scene with his timely film about police brutality, Fruitvale Station. 5 years later, he and star Michael B. Jordan re-teamed for Black Panther, a superhero movie that reckoned with issues like racism and colonialism. It became the highest-grossing solo superhero movie ever made. That same year, Crazy Rich Asians became an international sensation. But even as some filmmakers flourished, the industry as a whole was slow to change. Creators of color spoke out against whitewashing of non-white characters. Meanwhile, queer actors and creators have fought for representation too. Progress has sometimes been slow, with activists clashing with the industry over issues like casting cis actors to play trans characters. But at the same time, shows like Queer Eye and RuPaul's Drag Race have made LGBTQ+ culture visible and mainstream. And queer stories have broken barriers at the Emmys and the Oscars.
Moonlight, Best Picture.
Even as progress was made in the 2010s, Hollywood spent a lot of time reminiscing about the past. We got to see some of our favorite characters and our country's history-making moments all over again. Some of the best movies bottled that feeling of nostalgia into tales about growing up. TV capitalized on our nostalgia by bringing back every show they could, from Gilmore Girls to Roseanne to Full House. And even celebrities made major comebacks thanks to nostalgia for their older work, from the Keanu-sance to the J-Lo-sance to the McConaughey-sance.
To that I say, all right, all right, all right.
The decade kicked off with the first woman in Oscars history winning Best Director. On screen, women in the movies evolved from sidekicks who played second fiddle to the male characters to full-fledged heroes in their own right. The Hunger Games series proved that female action movies were bankable. And Frozen proved that kid-friendly films built around strong female characters were good for business too. Star Wars The Force Awakens broke a dam when it introduced Rey as the key hero in the next era of its saga. And the most popular female superhero in the world finally got her own movie, and an all-female utopia to boot. At first, networks and studios offered more opportunities that skewed towards white women creators. Slowly, the vision of women on screen became more inclusive and more realistic. And so many female characters, no matter their background, got a little more complex. And while at the beginning of the decade, a single female star in a cast of men was the norm, screenwriters are telling more interesting stories about groups of women on screen and exploring female relationships. Off-screen, women in Hollywood have fought against sexual harassment and sexual assault, and there are still plenty of challenges ahead. But women are taking matters into their own hands. Creators like Shonda Rhimes and Reese Witherspoon are building empires to promote female voices. What we see on the screen can have a major impact on the real world. Stories can inspire political action, or help kids envision themselves as heroes rather than sidekicks or love interests. It can help us reckon with our past, or imagine a brighter future.